Welcome to Family Business World. I'm Dr. Dale Caldwell. Thank you for joining us for another show with an amazing guest. Today I have Tony Russo, the president of the Commerce and Industry Association of New Jersey, better known as CIANJ. Tony, welcome. Thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thank you for having me, Dale. Happy to be here.
Well, again, we've gotten to know each other and developed a friendship, and you are one of the leaders in the state fighting for the rights of family businesses and small businesses. But before we talk about that, I want to find out a little more about you. Tony, tell me about your background. How did you end up being president of CIANJ?
Yeah, so I've been president now. This is my fourth year. I've been with CIANJ now 7 years. And my background, I actually was born and raised in Jersey City. I went to NJIT. Graduated with a mechanical engineering degree, and literally the day of graduation, I took off my cap and gown, drove to Trenton, and interviewed at the Department of Environmental Protection and accepted a job on the spot.
Wow, wow.
Well,
let me stop you there. Well, why did you go right to DEP? What drove you there?
You know, it was interesting because the day of graduation, this was circa 1991, and that was a year where a lot of environmental regulations and laws were passed. So the department was hiring a lot. And I remember driving to Trenton and interviewing with 6 different divisions there at DEP. And I walked out of there with like 2 job offers. And I went back to my mom and dad. And I'm a first generation Italian American. And my parents come from Naples, Italy. And It was interesting because when I explained to them that I got offered a job to work for the state, they said, you got to take it. You can't pass up an opportunity to work for the state of New Jersey. So I spent 4 years doing various environmental permits. Really got a good experience and exposure to what's going on from that side of the world.
One of the things, let me stop. One of the things that really amazes me is you have a great understanding of legislation, of the details around legislation. A lot of people in your position know the issue, but they don't know the details behind it. So now that kind of explains that. Did you have a good experience at DEP? Was it good training?
I did, and really where my strength is, and I haven't really done it recently, but I spent 11 years representing chemical and pharmaceutical companies on the regulatory side.
Okay.
So I go deep into the weeds, Dale, reading the New Jersey Register, going through complex environmental regulations like air quality, water quality, and it really, I guess, made me realize that when it comes to regulations, they can be very detailed, very complex. But what I didn't appreciate until I took my job in Trenton as a lobbyist, working for the Chemistry Council, is really understanding the legislative side of things. And a lot of people don't appreciate that before regulations are adopted, you have to have enabling laws and legislation. So I got to see how the State House worked, the legislature worked, and I spent 11 years doing that. And then fast forward, I also spent about 2 years in DC for a small association called the National Lime Association, calcium oxide. And I really got exposed to the federal side of things.
Interesting. Well, what a great background. That's a great mix.
Oh, yeah. And just to give you a perspective, when I thought I knew what I was doing in Trenton, multiply that by 100 when you go to DC, then you realize that, wow, okay, this is really what they mean by, legislation and regulation. But I came back to New Jersey in 2013, and I was fortunate enough to do government affairs for this association, CIANJ, for the first 3 years. And then when the opportunity came up, I interviewed for the post, and I was very fortunate that the board of directors chose me to lead this organization.
Well, you've done. I don't think anybody would challenge the fact that you've been as amazing a president as the association has had. But this background, some of it I really didn't know, really explains a lot. Because one of the other things I really like about you is that you often really, in the midst of a conversation, say, okay, let's dumb it down. Let's keep it in its simplest form. Because a lot of times people impress you with the language and so on, and you're able to kind of bring it down for the common folk like me to really understand what's going on. So and this time, this is your sweet spot. We're in the midst of a legislative avalanche. And so tell me, what's been going on at CIANJ as we're dealing with the small business crisis?
Yeah, and it's unfortunate, Dale, because I think a situation like we're experiencing right now, I feel our members' pain, literally.
Yeah.
I'm on the phone with both small companies, small businesses, and large companies, and there's a lot of uncertainty. And you know the mantra, I mean, uncertainty is not good for business.
Right.
And everybody understands the health crisis, but I think it caught a lot of our companies off guard back in March. I don't think companies were ready for these lockdowns and restrictions. So I've spent the majority of my time working with the governor's office, the legislature, and our members, just trying to go through the executive orders, going through the restrictions. But when are we going to come back to work? And it's been an interesting journey. It's been difficult, but as people say, I mean, eventually this will all pass, and we'll get back to a new normal, but a normal nonetheless. And I think that's going to be important. But yeah, so companies, give you an idea, and then we represent about 900 different companies from virtually every sector.
Wow.
And that's one thing I like about my job is in my previous employment, I represented vertical organizations,
Right.
whether wine producers or chemical companies. But here I speak with bankers, I speak with accountants, lawyers, environmental consultants, manufacturers, utility companies. And I really am able to connect the dots and really appreciate how business is really integrated.
Right.
And one business really depends on another one.
Right.
And everybody is going through a lot right now.
But more than that, Tony, it's really you're seeing how society is integrated. You're really seeing every aspect of society in ways that a lot of people don't, and that also explains how effective, why you've been so effective.
Yeah, no, thank you, Dale. And so you get an appreciation and an understanding when you talk to people, and I'm real big on that. I know we're doing a Zoom call right now, but nothing replaces a face-to-face handshake. Tell me about your business. What are you going through? And when you hear those stories, it brings it into reality.
It really does. And I guess, I love big business. I love unions. But the reality is they have enough extra margin in their profitability to really hire lobbyists who can really fight for. And what we're seeing is small businesses are forgotten. It really has amazed me how leaders of all parties have overlooked the fact that America is a small business country. That when you're looking at this 30+ million unemployment, it's from small business. And so my hope is, as we go forward, how do we let the powers that be know that this is a small business country?
Yeah, I think it's incumbent upon people like me and you, Dale, but also I ask our businesses, take the time to advocate, right? It's a key word, advocacy, right? People think, well, am I going to make a difference? And I'll use a P word, passion. And, I'm in Trenton all the time, and I see it from all angles. And, my hat's off to the unions and to other civic groups that bring that passion to Trenton.
Yep.
And I think it's time that businesses do the same thing.
Yep.
And we need to coalesce around each other. It's not an issue whether it's a drug manufacturer or a landscaper or a printer. You're running a business.
Right.
And what is it what's important? You want that ability to run that business unimpeded. And one of the things that sets us up or apart from other business groups is, and I really didn't appreciate it until I came here, but CIANJ was built on a free market concept, right? We're big advocates about a free market. And people often ask, well, what does that mean? And it's the ability of an entrepreneur, innovation, to come in, bring an idea to market, make it so that the cost of doing business is not so restrictive that investment walks away. And the key is interfacing with government and trying to get, both laws and regulations passed. And nobody's saying that we can't or we don't need laws and regulations. Obviously, the example I like to use is there's not one company we represent that doesn't believe in you have to have discrimination laws.
Right.
You have to have environmental laws, safety laws. But with all of these things that happen, there's an administrative burden to it. And a lot of our companies, and to your point, Dale, with the small businesses, a lot of them are family-owned businesses. They're wearing multiple hats.
Yep.
I can't tell you how many stories I'm sure you could share in what I'm about to say, that I'm talking to an owner of a company. That owner is doing multiple jobs.
Right.
Sometimes they may be doing HR. Maybe they're doing, operations. And honestly, there's just so much out there that they rely on groups like ours and FDU's Rothman Institute to really understand, filter out, what's going on. Tell me what I need to know, Tony. And that's what I get a lot of. Just tell me what I need to know. Tell me what do I need to do in order to stay compliant, but let me run my business and let me make money, but also give a quality of life to my employees, which they've come to rely upon. And I tell people that this is a quality of life issue.
Yep,
People
absolutely.
aren't working.
Absolutely.
And it gives people purpose when they wake up in the day and they say, I have a job to go to.
Yeah.
And they want to come home and feel like they did a good job and then enjoy their family.
And you do a great job of listening to the businesses. So one of the reasons that we specialize in this show is Family Business World, we're specializing in family businesses, is that really more than 80% of the businesses around the world are family businesses, large and small. But the thing about family business in the crisis is that the family is working for the business. So if the business is not working, the whole family's not working. It's not like somebody has a government job and they have benefits and so on. So we're really trying to advocate for, and as you saw in some of my writings, about even having a family business certification and require that government, a local family business certification, require that government does that. And so family business, the other thing about family business is that we've got to put a face on small business. I think part of the challenge is most people hear small business and they think they're all rich and they're making millions of dollars and it's about time that they're not making millions. Well, most are struggling and the margins are very, very slim. And so the families that I've had on the show and that I'm going to have on the show are really just an amazing group of people. The other thing that I'll say is that those family businesses treat employees better than any other sector of society because they can't afford to lose those folks. And one of the things I like about you is that you saw that and you've created your own family business group within CIANJ, which is partnered with the Rothman Institute. You want to say something about that?
Yeah, you hit it right on the head, Dale. I mean, people think of business right away. They think, is it a limited liability corporation, an S corp, a C corp? I think we ought to advocate for a new tax code called family business.
Yeah.
And so this way, it's what you said. It's families, it's people. And as far as their employees, what gives me a lot of gratitude is when I go out and visit our members. And I'll give you a couple of examples. I have one family-owned business that runs a warehouse. They destroy computer hard drives. He literally cooks every day for his employees at the warehouse.
Wow.
And they all gather around the lunch table and they enjoy lunch. It's those kind of stories. I was through one of our manufacturers, a family-owned business. It was started by her husband, and her husband unfortunately passed away. And when I'm walking around the floor, every employee gave this person a hug. A hug. And when I heard the stories, and this is the sign that this is a successful business, I was amazed when I'm talking to some of her employees and they were there 20, 30, 40 years.
Wow.
That doesn't happen anymore.
Wow.
It doesn't happen anymore. And that's a testament to her and her culture, right?
Yeah.
It's like you said, it's about family culture. It's about, they extend their family culture into their business, and a lot of them do take care of their employees because look, it's
into the work life. So we're going to take a little commercial break right now, Tony, and we'll come back following up on that discussion on family business. Thank you.
Thank you.
The session that we had with BCAT was really entertaining and enlightening. We were able to put together some very specific steps that we as individuals can take, and it was really fun to all come together and see sort of where we're going as a team and how we can all get there together.
We had a tremendous experience with the BCAT partners. One of the challenges that we have as an organization is to make sure that we have the right people in the right chairs doing the right thing. To do that well, you have to have synergy. You can try to dream up ways to make sure that your group does that, or you can rely on experts. We would recommend BCAT partners to anybody who's looking to take their organization to the next level.
To Tony Russo, the president of the Commerce and Industry Association of New Jersey, and the editor of their magazine. So Tony, we'll go back to family business. Tell me about the magazine that you have.
Yeah, so what I really enjoy is the fact that in addition to what we do on the advocacy event side, we're fortunate that back in the 1960s, the leadership of this group created a business-to-business magazine called Commerce Magazine. And it's really a mainstay of ours where, it goes out to about 30,000 readers. And we capture the business stories of the day. And, I'm happy to say that this week, in order to adapt to the new world, we're coming out with our digital version of the magazine. But it's called Commerce Magazine. We have a couple of dedicated staff. We have writers. We try to focus on Jersey-centric stories. We did this month in May, and you'll appreciate this, Dale. It's going to be all about family businesses.
Wonderful.
So we have columns about how important family businesses are.
Excellent. One of the things I'll say, Tony, and this is where I need your help. So FDU has a wonderful polling group, the FDU Poll, which is as big as some of the other big name polls we have out there. So we've partnered really over the last few months to do a small business poll, and it's free. It doesn't, we want to be a voice of small business. We're having trouble having people sign up for that, and I know you've put it in your newsletter. And that's what I'm saying is that I think a lot of businesses just aren't comfortable advocating for themselves. I find a lot of family businesses are very private. They don't want to come on the show. They don't want people, but you can't be private in this new world. And so say a little bit about that.
I think you hit it right on the head. I mean, they have to appreciate that they are running a business. And a business is a public front, right? When you think about it, whether it's your employees, the fees you pay, the taxes you pay, the salaries. I mean, it's important, that if you don't know your legislator, and I'm real big on that, I think businesses are a little too passive when it comes to advocacy. And what happens is that old adage, right? The squeaky wheel gets the attention.
Absolutely.
And that's why I think they have to find it within themselves, Dale, and obviously they could use associations like CIANJ and others in your group. And again, I go back to, and I want to appreciate the fact that they're doing more with less. And I think they just have to reach out to folks like you and me and say, this is what I need. Yep. I keep thinking, again, you mentioned that, one of the things I learned in engineering school was, and my professors drilled this into me, is when you have a problem, excuse me, when you have a problem or an equation, you simplify it first. Yeah. Simplify it. And I keep asking our members, what's the ask? Yeah. What's the ask? When you go tell legislator, you literally have 3 minutes. What's your ask? Yep. What is it that you want? And you'll find that a lot of them really, truly do want to help businesses. And I think it's important for family-owned businesses to really simplify their ask. What is it that they need that would help them get through the day?
Well, and it's funny. So I teach family business management at Fairleigh Dickinson University, and actually tomorrow is our last class, and we have a family business on that has an amazingly tragic story of family conflict, and so the students are going to have a great time asking questions. But it's amazing how young people and really most people in society are just not aware of what's really going on, that politics, the economy. So I have them looking at where the Dow is and what the price of gold is and other things. So I ask them every day, where are we with that? And they wouldn't be doing that. And these are business majors. So, the lack of awareness of how the world works. So I wanted to go back to your federal and state experience. I mean, is the federal government, just because it's so big, that much more out of touch with what's going on in the real world versus state government? Talk about some of the differences and what's going on.
Yeah, 100%. And I'll tell you an anecdote. When I'm down there, again, I'm an engineer, and my boss at the time was an attorney, and we're going down to the Hill, and I was amazed at, I think 1 out of 4 or maybe even 50% of folks that operate down there are attorneys, lobbyists, government affairs people. Yep. And again, I didn't appreciate that. I'm like, wow, 50% attorneys down here. And it's more complex without a doubt. It's complex because now you're dealing across the country. Everybody's got an issue, an interest. The stakeholders are just the order of magnitude. The difference with the state level, it's a lot smaller, right? You could deal with some issues that are localized, but it just brought my appreciation of, when you're doing government affairs, going back to what is government affairs? Right. What is advocacy? And you have to, it's really asking somebody else to do something for you. Yep. That you can't. So you can't do it yourself, right? You got to convince a legislator, and this is where I have to give them some credit and respect, because I've seen it. I mean, they're dealing with, issue after issue after issue.
Right.
And I'll throw out a stat for you and your audience. I mean, just in a 2-year legislative cycle, more than 10,000 bills,
Wow.
bills get introduced.
Wow.
How many would you say actually get signed into law? People think a lot more. Only about 400 or 500.
Wow.
So if you really want something done legislatively, you got to have an appetite for it, and you got to stomach it for about a year or 2 years. I mean, and again, it depends on the issue, but you know, I tell people to keep it simple. At the federal level, it was not simple.
Right.
You know, where you build relationships, and that's the other key thing here. And my former boss told me this, and I really appreciate it now. It's about building relationships not only with your legislators but also with their staff people.
Yep.
Because the people that are going to help you too.
But in addition, we're learning too, if you want some federal government stimulus, other things, you can have a relationship with your bank, with your accountant, with your attorney. And the one thing that I'll say legislatively, and I want to be quoted on this, is if every legislator, I love legislators and politicians, and some are good friends, but if every one of them had to have made payroll, this would be a different country. Because people don't understand how hard it is. These small family businesses are they can't go to sleep because they have to figure out how to pay their employees. Even when times are good. And so that is so critical, and people just don't get it. They don't understand how hard it is. I don't know if you want to say something about that.
No, you hit it on the head. I mean, making payroll, that's a great example of how it's not easy to do. And in light of this crisis, I keep hearing 2 words over and over again, and it's cash flow.
Yep.
Right? Again, I talk to, and if you're an accountant, I'm not an accountant, but it's all about accounts receivable, accounts payable. You can't pay your payables unless you get your receivables.
Exactly.
And right now, what's going on? Everybody is like hunkering down, saying there's uncertainty. Let me hold on to my money. Maybe I won't sign that contract.
Right.
Maybe I'll wait a week or two. Well, let's just see where the economy goes. And what happens is when you keep your money, the economy isn't flowing, right? The money isn't flowing. So I think you hit it on the head. There has to be that appreciation that you have to make payroll every 2 weeks, every week, maybe twice a month, whatever it might be. But it's not easy, and there's no guarantee that what happens today is going to happen tomorrow.
Right.
And that's why you have to stay out in front, and it's not easy to run a business.
And as we're getting close to the end of time, but one of the things too is that when government stops, which made sense because of the pandemic, that stopping everything, really stopping business, that's going to last for years. The impact of stopping that, even for a week or a month. And so this whole pandemic, which will be over hopefully in the near future, is going to last for a long time. And so a year from now, we'll be talking about residue of that. And so you are, I mean, again, you are one of the leaders in New Jersey that really is helping businesses through this. Any advice that you've heard that businesses need to think about as they deal and get out of this crisis?
Yeah, I think a lot of them are going to probably have more of a longer term or a long game look at the world after this. Where you could play the short game, but you could also play the long game. So I think a lot of them are going to come out of this crisis, knowing the importance of planning ahead, and also diversifying their business if they can. And so I think at the end of the day, it's important for them to. I always like to look at it lessons learned, and how do you improve? Right, you could always improve. What are the metrics? And I think a lot of our companies are going to come out of this knowing that they have to be a little bit more flexible, versatile, plan ahead for these kind of situations again.
Well, as you know, we do this Family Business Friday Zoom call at noon, Zoom at noon every Friday, that will probably continue through the end of the year because the response has been good. And I always show some of the same slides. And one of the slides is showing, the 2008, 9, 10 economy. And it looked at unemployment was a record 700,000. And then you look at the stock market and it dropped about the same here. Now, we're dealing with this crisis, we're over 30 million versus 700,000. And so what it really shows is that, and I invest and I love the Dow and so on, but that doesn't tell the economy. We really need a small business Dow. We really need something that we can look at every day and say, this is the state of small business. I don't know if you have any thoughts about that or have heard any metrics, but I think we need to really push for something like that.
That's really smart, Dale, and I think you hit it right on the head. You don't really catch the small business, factor on the news at night, but that's a great idea about having a small business index, and just what's going on with this, because that's who employs the majority of people in New Jersey.
Exactly.
I mean, even on my way to work today, I drove by a couple of strip malls, and I just was stopping and appreciating all those businesses are shut down right now. It's also their suppliers that are hurting, it's their truck drivers, and it's going back to that consumer confidence. So, yeah, I would advocate for something like that. That makes a lot of sense.
Well, and again, maybe that's something we can work at with the university and others. And so, as we wrap this up, family businesses, and I didn't always, since I've been at the Rothman Institute of Innovation and Entrepreneurship, I've really been introduced to like you, a wide range of these family businesses. And the consistency of their compassion for people and for the community. The other thing that I always like to say on every show is how much these businesses are giving back to the community. That they're doing all sorts of amazing things and amazing stories. One business that you introduced me to, which is a restaurant chain that has over 100 of restaurants that I was talking to them and their HR, and they were telling stories, not bragging, of how there's some employees whose parents they couldn't pay for the funeral for their parents, and so they paid the funeral costs. Not because they had to, but because they wanted to. And so that's the other piece that we haven't really talked about. How do you get the word out about how important these businesses are to the community, to society? And I just don't think the legislators know that. And I'm sure you could tell, maybe we need to, in your magazine at some point, tell some of these stories, how these businesses are giving back. I don't know.
And Dale, I mean, obviously we want to work with you, but every year for the past 7 years, we hold a big gala every March. We had to postpone ours this year. And we feature all the stories in the magazine. We call it Companies That Care. And what it is we go out, we collect stories. Tell us your good deeds. Tell us what you do. And to keep this all transparent, we bring in independent judges, and they go through all the entries, and we give out awards, and we tell their stories. You're absolutely right. What you have to do, what we have to do, is use our platforms to tell those stories. Not so much to give them a pat on the back, but it's important, going back to the people in Trenton, that they appreciate that what they're doing for their communities. You can't sometimes quantify that, right? But those are good deeds, whether it's like what you mentioned, or people giving back to their local Little League baseball teams, or their food banks. I mean, it's those kind of stories. It's important to tell those stories because it factors into that whole why family businesses are important. So we have to use our platforms in order to do that.
Well, one of the things I love doing on this show is maybe figuring out ways we can work together with the guest. And so we have our annual Family Business Awards. We had our 27th last year. We'll have our 28th this year. Hopefully if we open up by October, which I think we will, maybe there's a way we can partner on that, because we're looking to explore on ways to kind of celebrate businesses in new ways, especially the heroes of this. So
I want to put in a plug for you, Dale, because I've known you now for a little bit of over a year, and you are really a breath of fresh air. You're very grounded. You're salt of the earth. I think you're a great advocate for your businesses, and we need more Dale Caldwells in the world. So,
well, Tony, well, thank you.
I've been very fortunate to call you a friend now and work with you, and again, you're very inspiring. So I appreciate it. I'm learning a lot by working with you and your team, so it's been a privilege.
Well, and again, it's been. I was going to say the same thing to you, because I just love your style as down to earth. You are always, when you're available, you're available. You're president of one of the major organizations, yet you really are a man of the people. So I think we're at the end of time, Tony. This has been great. Thank you as always. And Tony Russo from CIANJ. Go to their website. They're doing amazing things. Tony, have a great day, and thanks again.
Thank you, Dale. Stay safe. Thank you.
You too. Stay safe. Stay safe. Goodbye, everybody. We'll see you next time.
Visit Dr.